Hello, I'm Tara Brabazon, and I'm the Dean of Graduate Research at Flinders University, and welcome to Vlog 266, Catastrophizing. Catastrophizing. This vlog comes by request from a wonderful student and her supervisor, and both would like to remain anonymous, perhaps for pretty obvious reasons, because this remarkable student is enjoying her PhD, great relationship with the supervisor, everything's going well, except the students around her are creating micro-traumas and catastrophes every single day. And she wanted some strategies to understand why this is happening and how to manage it so that her own candidature is not impacted. Now, what's happening in this lab supposedly is that the slightest thing happens, something happens, and her fellow students summon the zombie apocalypse. Now, look, I love the zombie apocalypse as much as the next person. Trust me, I do. I have all the kit. I am so ready to go. I love me a zombie apocalypse. But it does become tiring and it does become stressful to manage our friends or our peers, our colleagues, who transform every single event into like this Shakespearean tragedy. And if I move from Hamlet to popular culture and animation for one moment, if you are a Chicken Little PhD student, you may be focused on all these micro dangers. And what that means is you'll actually miss the real problem, the real concerns. So this is a fascinating vlog request. Love doing the research on this one, catastrophizing and how to manage those who do it. Now, I may be talking to you today. If there are any Chicken Littles out there, hi, how you going? Let's talk about it. And can I also say, I'm not blaming you, because your behaviour, what you're doing, is completely understandable. We live in complex, chaotic, disturbed and disturbing times. And look, I receive at least every single day 50 emails with that, you know, the red exclamation mark. It's like urgent, 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 urgent. And these students are sending me that email with the exclamation mark because they want me to drop everything that I'm doing that day and focus on them. And so I do that. So if something is very urgent, I will move and cancel a whole series of meetings that are in place for that day, and I get into it. And what I find in almost all of these events is something incredibly small that 2 people in 2 minutes could have sorted out, that becomes operatic. And so 5 people have to spend 5 days trying to work through a resolution for that student and or supervisor. So as you can see, catastrophizing has pretty profound consequences. But firstly, I want to acknowledge that what you're feeling is real and it's meaningful. And certainly the context to which you are responding is frightening. I understand all of that. But moving from, wow, this is an interesting challenge, wow, that's a bit disturbing, to the zombies are coming and we're all going to die, that movement has consequences on the people around you. So let's put in place some definitions of catastrophizing. And then what I want to do is put 10 strategies in place to manage it. Manage it if it's happening to you, manage it if it's happening to a colleague of yours and it's starting to impact on your life. So catastrophizing refers to a set of behaviours and a set of assumptions that whatever the issue or the concern or the problem, the worst is going to occur from it. So why this is so challenging, particularly in a PhD program, is that this is a misreading of a real situation, and it exaggerates the issues that are being confronted and results in behaviours that block effective goal setting and the resolution of those challenges. So say you are worried about failing your PhD. Hear it all the time. I'm going to fail my PhD. I'm worried I'm going to fail my PhD. Now, the actual fact is that only 1% of students fail a PhD. So, by you thinking, I'm going to fail, I'm going to fail, I'm going to fail, you know you're not. You're worried about a situation that will not happen. And the problem is, when you're worried about a situation that will not happen, you're not reading, you're not conducting writing, you're not drafting, and you're not doing the behaviours, enacting the work that will actually allow you to complete a PhD with success. So remember, something terrific has happened to you. You have been accepted into a PhD program. This is the moment that will be the foundation for the rest of your professional life. This is tremendous. But when you are catastrophizing, you are creating arbitrary blockages to who you could be and who you could become. And this is more than over-exaggeration, if you will. Catastrophizing is a habit. And it's also a proxy. It's a proxy that a person believes that they have lost control over their life. So this is very serious. At its most basic, catastrophizing is a cognitive distortion, creating this never-ending crisis. So catastrophizing is a coping mechanism. So let's put in place what the research says about catastrophizing and how we can address that today in yourself or in others or in your context. Let's do this. 1, frame and label the issue carefully. I ban certain phrases from myself and from my students. And one of those phrases I ban is any sentence that begins with, I will never be able to. I will never be able to. Now, I ban that phrase from myself and from my students, because however you're going to answer or end that statement, it's not a productive ending. So therefore, if you can frame a problem and label a problem, then you can solve a problem. It's very easy to jump from you've made a mistake in the lab to I'm going to be kicked out of a PhD program. Boof, boof. Now that jump can occur if the original issue is not framed, labelled and understood. Making a mistake is human. We make mistakes every single day. Every single one of us makes mistakes. But we live in these bizarrely heightened times where everything supposedly is important. It's urgent. Me. Now, me. So the cascading to crisis is a way to stop solving the actual problem. So something has happened, cool. Take a breath. Write down what has happened, frame it, label it, and understand it. Then, from this clearly framed matter or issue, you can work out a solution. Work out, even if you have to work with someone else, to come up with that solution. So we must not assume that all issues are life-threatening, urgent, important. 99% of life is pretty boring, pretty banal, and pretty silly. And the thing that is so terribly important, you may not even remember tomorrow, let alone in a year's time. So sit in your present, understand what has happened, and put that into language. And that will allow you to develop a solution. Catastrophizing emerges when we allow unnamed, under-organised ideas to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger rather than understanding them. 2, so recognise that many organisational systems like universities actually encourage catastrophizing. This was a life-changing moment for me. I realised this, about 22, 23 years ago. Now, I've worked in truly bonkers universities, and I've worked for truly, truly bonkers people, right? And I've actually worked out that people on a daily basis actively create, actively construct catastrophes, actively construct panic, fear, so that I have to stop my work. So the greatest revenge to the mediocre people in our universities is to work hard and be successful. But there are people in our universities that want to see you fail. And they want to see you fail so that they feel better. Remember, most academics do not have teaching qualifications. Most academics don't have any leadership qualifications, right? Haven't got the qualifications, and yet, therefore, they run our universities like an episode of Big Brother or I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. They assume a PhD provides you with expertise in teaching. It does not. They assume a PhD provides expertise in leadership. It does not. So what happens is, from this lack of expertise, these particular individuals want to transform your lab or your group into living and working on the edge all the time. Edge of fear, of panic, of worry. And the reason they do that is that so that person can be a hero because they can solve the problem that they invented. And yes, I can feel a lot of you nodding through this conversation. This is a real problem of many workplaces, but particularly, I would argue, our universities. Now, luckily, I worked this out pretty early in my career, and I refused, and I refuse, to buy into other people's nonsense. I am not responsible for solving other people's invented problems. I am not responsible for making other academics feel better about themselves when they're not working hard enough. So as you can see, I'm not following people down those particular rabbit holes. My role model in helping me step out of university culture, step out of this catastrophizing, is probably of no surprise to you. My great life role model is Endora from Bewitched. The mother-in-law from hell. The best eyeliner in the history of television. Now, Endora would appear and disappear from situations, never too bothered about other people's traumas at all. And she had that greatest vibe of all. It's like, I'm sorry, why do you think I should care about that problem? I'm sorry, I'm out. And she would always be very clear to differentiate, no, that's your concern, Durwood. Durwood, that's about you. This is about me. So the best way, I always think, to avoid catastrophizing in our universities is to be Endora. Wear great eyeliner, speak the difficult truths, and then always create that space and that identity away from other people's nonsense. 3, live in your present. Now, most days I spend a couple of hours managing students and supervisors who are catastrophizing. And that's why this request from our wonderful student and supervisor was so amazing, because I live this every day, and yet I didn't have a sense of looking at myself and coming up with this as a vlog. So I'm so grateful to the student. But most of the catastrophizing that I deal with in my office emerges through a fear about something that may happen. So COVID has made all of this situation worse, and there's no doubt about that. And I always have a singular bit of advice for students or supervisors. And this is a bit of advice that not only stops catastrophizing, but is a characteristic of the most successful people. And that one bit of advice I give people is simply live in the present. Don't be drawn to the past. Don't get worried about a future that probably will never happen. So work on your now. What can I do today? What can I do in the next hour? Now, yes, you can spend the next hour complaining, offering excuses, being trapped in fear, or blaming other people for the state of your life. Or you can take the next 60 minutes and do something. You know, write something, read an article, check some references. Great. So then at the end of that hour, you've done something that actually makes your present better. Now you can complain for an hour, but you've done nothing. You've done nothing. The best way to avoid catastrophizing is to avoid those people around you who are catastrophizing. Live in your present. Have a good day. Work a good hour. 4, avoid self-pity. The toughest people to help as a friend, as a peer, as a colleague are the students or the supervisors, the advisors that get completely lost in their own self-pity. So when selfishness, self-absorption and catastrophizing align, it's almost impossible to get the person out of it, right? And that's when we start to need professional assistance and talk therapies. So if you find yourself starting to move into self-pity, then what I'd ask is you intervene, and you're going to have to force yourself to intervene and rewrite the narrative. So instead of concentrating on everything that's going wrong in your entire life, or indeed everything that's not perfect in your entire life, wake up in the morning and you know what? Recognize the privilege of conducting research, the privilege of being given the chance to do a PhD. A qualification that just over 1% of the world's population holds. What a privilege that is. So when stuff's going wrong, when research is going wrong, that's cool. Research always goes wrong. That's why it's research. If a PhD was easy, everybody would have one. So instead of focusing endlessly on what's going wrong, focus outward. What can I do? What can I do? Put another way, think a lot less about how am I feeling, how do I feel, how do I feel. Focus on what you're doing rather than what you're feeling. And ironically, if you do that, you'll feel better. So self-pity traps you. Doing something, working on your PhD, moves you beyond yourself and gives you a new context and a new vista. Thank you. Excuse me. 5. Know that you can cope. 5. Know that you can cope. Catastrophizing really has 2 phases, right? The first is we predict that the worst outcome is about to happen to us. That's stage 1. The worst thing is about to happen. But secondly, we assume that when that outcome does happen, we won't be able to cope. Now, this second problem was an issue of mine, I think, for a lot of years, right? And I've been in a lot of pretty dreadful situations, dreadful jobs, dreadful people, crazy situations. And when I've been in that situation, it's like, okay, right, I'm here. But my problem was I'd then say in my head, right, well, I'm not going to be able to manage this, right? I'm not going to be able to do it. So, you know, when the worst things happen, you know, your partner gets a terminal illness, your partner dies, these sort of terrible things. They're terrible things, right? But then the second stage is the problem where you just go, I can't manage. Our first response with these dreadful circumstances is often, this is too much. I just can't handle it. There is no way I can manage this, right? And look, like most of us, I have to go into meetings most weeks that are damn uncomfortable and are pretty yucky because some random academic wants to sort of name call, be nasty, push me down, push other people down, make everybody feel small so that they feel big, right? And, you know, that happens to me all the time, happens to you all the time. We look at our calendar and you see, you know, that dreadful meeting with that dreadful person and you just go, and I sort of make sort of random sort of vowel noises for some minutes, right? Now I've learnt how to change that narrative, right? Change the response. Know that whatever happens, you can manage it. Whatever happens, you can manage it. And you've got evidence for that. Because when bad stuff has happened in the past, you've managed it. So you are alive today because you learnt how to cope yesterday. So no matter how bad the situation is, you've got this. You can do this because you have done it. And know that even those dreadful meetings, they start, but they also end. 6, don't confuse thought with reality. One of my favourite studies ever confirmed that up to 70% of our thoughts are negative. 70% of our thoughts are negative. Wow. So that means in daily life, about 70% of the time, we're all moving around and we're thinking this isn't going to end well. Unbelievable. But of course, that thinking is not reality. Thinking is a way of managing reality, or indeed not managing reality. The problem we have is that we are confusing what we think about something with what is actually occurring. We as researchers, therefore, need to get some data points, okay? Before you go all gothic on me, before the zombie apocalypse comes, go, oh, I'm thinking this. Is it real? Find me some data. Find me a data set. Now, if something does seem a bit of a problem, then get some more information about it. Check your thinking. Do a bit of reading, see what's going on here. And know that just because you think something does not mean that it's real. If you find yourself confusing thinking and reality, then a great strategy here is to say stop out loud. So if you find yourself, oh, I'm thinking, and then you feel your thoughts cascading to a really dark place, if you feel yourself doing that, then say out loud, stop, stop. And that process, by the way, has a name. It's called thought stopping. Who knew that was the thing? Now, what that thought stopping allows you to do is focus on what is, rather than about thinking about something that is not. 7, start a journal. The research has shown, and this is for about a decade, that students that have a journal through their PhD and reflect on their candidature on the way through are the students that finish. And that means those students are able to monitor and manage their thoughts. Now, if you are a catastrophizer, so if you're watching this and going, yeah, this is absolutely me, I do this every day, rock and roll, well done. The singular strategy to manage this is to have a journal and write in it on a daily basis. Now, this is a functional and effective strategy. It has been studied, and the reason it's so successful is by journaling, you can step away from the current moment. You're able to put a problem, a thought, into language and reflect upon that thought, right? Now that pause, that moment of reflection, transforms a catastrophe into just an event or an issue. And of course, an event or an issue can be managed. So if I've been talking about you today, so you've recognised a lot of yourself here, and you are changing the relatively straightforward behaviour of a PhD student on a daily basis into a bold and the beautiful soap opera, if that's you, Brooke, then get yourself a notebook, seriously, and just write out the experiences, write out the feelings. Now look, I know, this is a bit hippie for me as well, right? But putting these issues, putting these patterns into prose will control them. So if you need some trigger questions to start this, so you're not staring at, what am I going to say? Some trigger questions that will help you through this are, What is the situation that you're worried about? What is this situation? What are you frightened might happen? How likely is that event to happen? Have you got any evidence that this may happen? And then these two questions help me a lot. What is the worst thing that could happen from this moment? And what is the best thing that could happen from this moment? Now, if you write down, and this has helped me a lot, beyond what I can probably express to you, to be able to actually write down or express the worst case scenario. Okay, so this is catastrophe, blah, blah, blah. Okay, right, well, catastrophe. From here, what is the worst thing that could actually happen? And then when you stop and think about what the worst thing could be, then you can view it at a distance and you think, oh, well, look, that's the worst thing that can happen. I can manage that. Put it into language. 8, decrease your options and reduce your choices. Our whole culture is based on this notion that I've got the right to choose, I've got the right to options, I've got the right to opinions, I've got this freedom, I have the right to do anything I want to do. Anything. Freedom. But of course these choices and options and freedoms won't necessarily bring you to success and won't get you a PhD. Because what's actually required for success is focus, not freedom. Focus, not freedom. So if you make the choice to actively reduce your choices, if you make the choice to actively reduce your options, then you'll be successful, because the successful people have very few moving parts in their lives. They have daily patterns and they don't divert from them too much. They save money because they choose not to choose. So they choose not to buy that cup of coffee and actually make their own. They choose not to buy lunch and bring it from home. They save money. They choose not to choose. Similarly, the successful PhD students choose to work on their thesis, choose to work on that article, choose to read, choose to conduct that experiment. So rather than choosing to choose and therefore wasting time. So look at your daily life. Look at your daily patterns. Have you got spaces that are enabling too many choices for you? And that's allowing you to invent all these scenarios, the gunna, coulda, shoulda, getting involved in gossip and other people's lives instead of just focusing on your research and your business. So make a decision today to simplify your life. Order your life. Organize your life. And that choice to reduce your choices creates the focus that will allow you to finish the PhD, rather than think about all these different reasons why you won't finish your PhD. 9, value yourself on your own terms. In higher education, you will be waiting for hell to freeze over if you are expecting someone to acknowledge your successes. We live in selfish and self-absorbed times. So if you only gain your sense of identity from what other people think about you, you are opening yourself out to catastrophizing. Now, that was my advice, by the way, to the student that asked for this vlog. Her lab mates are seriously oversharing. Love me an oversharer. And these oversharers are just worried about everything. And the trouble is, for the people that are doing fine, like you're okay, I'm okay, these oversharers are doing a lot of damage to the people that are doing okay. So the healthiest thing that all of us as workers in higher education can do is value ourselves on our own terms. So your health, your well-being, your happiness, your joy must never be wedded to what other people think about you. And that includes your supervisor, includes your advisor, it also includes your fellow students. You are responsible for your reactions to the life that is around you. Yes, your friends might be summoning the zombie apocalypse. Can't do anything about that. Can't do anything about that at all. But you are responsible for how you react to this stuff about the zombie apocalypse. Now, my response is always, if people are coming full zombie, woo, come on, yeah, come on, zombie. If people are coming at me like that, I basically smile and wish them well. Now, in my professional day job as Dean, students come to me every day with problems, deep problems. And for those of you that have been to my office, you know exactly what I say. When a student presents to me, my first statement to them is I welcome them to the office and I say, right, what is a strong resolution for you today? What do you want to get out of this meeting? What do you want to get out of this conversation? And what is so stunning to me is the overwhelming majority of students say, oh look, they don't want anything resolved, they don't want any solutions or anything, they just want to talk with someone. And look, that's lovely, but it's also a bit sad because I'm happy to listen, I'm happy to care if it helps, but isn't it sad that a student would come to see a dean to talk rather than actually resolve the issue that is worrying them? So therefore what's important is we start to focus on you, but also on your definition of success. Consider today, consider this week, what is your definition of success? What's your definition of joy? What's your definition of happiness? And try and configure answers to those questions that are accountable to only you. You are responsible for your own success. You're responsible for your own joy. You're responsible for your own happiness. Catastrophes emerge when we wonder why people aren't noticing us. Why aren't these people recognizing how fabulous I am? Now, at that moment, what you've just done is you've given your power away to other people. You've given other people power over you. And you've created space for ambiguity, confusion, despair, and yes, catastrophizing. 10. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to yourself. Now in 2012, a series of small studies, they weren't generalisable at all, but a series of small studies investigated the relationship between fatigue and catastrophizing. Interesting. Similarly, catastrophizing is associated with an array of mental health issues. Now, cognitive behavioural therapy and talk therapy more generally has been shown to be very successful in these cases. And there is a reason that they work, because CBT disrupts. It disrupts thinking and behavioural patterns, right? So be kind to yourself. If you as an individual, you just can't get yourself out of this situation and your supervisor, advisor, your peers are starting to give you some distance, they're going, right, well, let's just get away from this person for a while, then you know what? it's time to get some actual help, and that's a great thing. Now at Flinders, we have a remarkable health and counselling service, and I'm incredibly proud that the Office of Graduate Research and our health and counselling colleagues, we are like two sides of the same bit of paper, and we care desperately for our students, and we work together to try and enable the best results for our students. And for our students around the world, I'm sure your universities have remarkable health and counselling services as well. So you know what? Get help. Talk this thing through, come up with strategies to change your behaviour and change your patterns. What catastrophizing does is it keeps you trapped. It keeps you trapped in worry about a future that will never happen. So whenever I feel myself doing this, I challenge myself, and how I change my behaviour is through a strategy called reframing. So I reframe the situation. I force myself to endlessly ask, what is the worst thing that could happen here? This helps me a lot. What is the worst thing that could happen? And when I've actually named it, I've gone, all right, well, that's the worst thing that can happen. I can manage that. I've managed that before. Cool, we're rocking. And because, and you know, we're all adults, because everything that could have happened has happened, and I've managed it, and you've managed it, and I'm still alive, and you're still alive, we'll be okay. Also, this reframing allows me to recognise a singular truth, that we as researchers, we as workers in higher education can only control what we can control. Our job simply is to control what we can control, and we do the best we can in this context, in this moment. In research, there are good days and there are bad days. And you know what? Both are valuable to your doctorate. No research project is perfect, and no researcher is perfect. But what a PhD can teach us is that our imperfections are often the basis of our greatest discovery. And our fallibility reminds us that we can learn and we can improve every single day. And for me, that's the very definition of success. It's also the definition of courage. I wish you love, light, and peace. Tea out.